Okay, hello everyone. We're from Group 5, and today we will be talking about phonetic features. But first, let me introduce our members first. There are myself, Gia, Najwa, as well as Siwi. So today there are three main topics that we are going to be discussed. Those are first, why we use features, second, features of English, and lastly, representation and the feature hierarchy. Okay, let's start with why we use features. First, let's talk about features as independent and coordinated elements. The representation of a segment with features can be initially accomplished by placing the features of each segment in an array called a matrix. Each feature or group of features defines a specific property of the segment, and this representation is in binary terms. Plus means that a feature is present, and minus means that it is absent. Here you can see a feature matrix for English vowel A. Okay. Next will be conveyed by Najwa.
Okay. Feature and natural classes viewing segment of composite of features that each feature may represent a phonologically relevant characteristic of segment. Examine how feature enable to us to distinguish among classes of sound made up of members that vary in one or more articulation dimension. Example, the set of sound P, T, K, S, and if, all of which differ in place and in part, in manner of articulation, can be readily distinguished from the equally differing set if, T, H, Z, and E by the single feature voice alone. In phonological terms, features express natural classes, which are classes of sound and share a feature of features, such as violence, voiceless, voiceless stop, glides, high vowel, nasal consonant, and so on. Here's the front and back vowel in English. Okay, next. It is not just individual phonemes such as P, B, K, and G that contrast in English. Rather, the entire class of voice stop contrasts with the class of voiceless stop. It is the feature voice that is constantly contrastive of the individual segment. Since we define the contrast between each part or segment with otherwise identical articulation of residing in the feature voice. Other features provide for the other contrast. For example, we can capture the contrast between T and S in English with the feature continuum, but T and S are voiceless and have an alveolar point of articulation. By viewing the relevant distinctive feature as continuum, we can use the same feature to distinguish between P and if and P and T and Z. Next slide. Here is the soft fricative contrast as a feature. Continuum P, continuum P, P, and P, F and S, T and Z. By systematically examining the phonemic contrast of a language, we can extract the phonetically distinctive feature and start the phonemic inventory in terms of this irreducible linguistic element. Next slide. Can be explained by Gia.
Okay, next we will be talking about features, processes, and allophonic variation. Allophonic variation is not simply the substitution of allophone for another, but rather the environmentally conditioned change or specification of a feature or features. Certain features reflect classes of sound that are not always reflected in traditional descriptive terminology, but which are also relevant to phonological pattern. The feature coronal, for example, refers to the class of sounds made with the tongue tip or blade raised. It turns out that just this feature is required to state the constraint on the selection of consonant sequences in coda position in English presented in chapter 1. When a vowel is tense and followed by two consonants or pent, or when a vowel is lax and followed by three consonants next, the final consonant must always be cardinal: T, D, S, Z, E, O, F, a, tuft, or the. Features are thus more than phonetics description in a different thus.
Since features are considered to be the ultimate building blocks of phonology, linguists have attempted to state all possible phonological facts about language with the fewest number of features possible. Only a limited number of features, currently around 24, have been proposed. Features thus constitute an important part of theory of what is possible and what is not possible in the phonological behavior of human beings. Next slide. Next. The next section presents the feature of English table 327 and 328 present the vowel and consonant segment of English along with the feature needed to represent them in metric form. It is a good idea to look this figure over before going to read about individual features.
Here is the feature matrix for English vowels, and this one is feature matrix for English consonant. You may take a look at it first. Okay, next we will be talking about features of English, which will be presented by Siwi and Kanaya.
Okay, features of English. Next. Most features have labels that reflect traditional articulatory terms such as voice, consonantal, and nasal. These features require little further description. A few features have less familiar labels, such as coronal and anterior. From this point, features will be used to describe classes of sound. At the same time, we will continue throughout the book to use time-honored terms such as consonant, glide, and upstream, affricative, or non-nasal stop in phonetics description. The traditional terminology will be maintained because it is still widely used in phonetic description. Features are not ranked haphazardly in metric, rather they are organized into groups that reflect natural classes. The following headings indicate that these classes are and how the feature represent them. Next. Okay, major class features. Features that represent the class consonant, abstract, and sonorant, nasal, liquid, glide, and vowel. And first one is consonantal. Consonantal is produced with a major abstraction in the vocal tract. All sonorant consonant are plus consonantal, but liquids and nasals are also plus consonantal. Some explain P, B, S, Z, F, E, L, M, and K. And the second is syllabic. Syllabic is vowels and syllabic liquids and nasals. Plus syllabic sound are those which may function as the nucleus of a syllable. The basic gist is that this sound can be the center of a syllable. Next, please. However, sometimes certain consonant can become plus syllabic. In English, we sometimes find R, the R sound in her and red become syllabic. For example, consider the word fire. Some people pronounce this as a single syllable, but we can pronounce it as two, fire, where the in the middle denotes the separation of two syllables, and the leading single quote precedes the stressed syllable. And the third is sonorant. All and only the singable, false, glides, liquids, and nasal, even when they are voiceless. Plus sonorant additionally includes nasal consonant. Specifically, sonorant refers to any speech sound which produces a non-turbulent airflow. Okay, and this is how to use major class features. And then laryngeal features. Laryngeal means these features have to do with how the larynx is utilized during sound production. There are three laryngeal features. Okay. The first one is voice. All voice sound are plus voice. All voiceless sound are minus voice. The plus voice phones are those which involve the vibration of the vocal folds, whereas minus voice phones do not induce vibration. And the second is spread glottis or SG. This feature distinguishes unspurred from unspurred consonant. Unspurred consonant are plus SG. Tones which are plus aspirate have a stronger outward airflow. All voiceless fricatives plus the voice glottal fricative are plus aspirate, and other sound are minus aspirate. And the third one is considered constricted glottis or CG. Male with the glottis closed, in English only the glottal stop is plus HG.
So the next is place features. Place features are features that represent place of articulation, those which typically characterize the active articulator involved in consonant constriction, and the acoustic perceptual features associated with movement of these articulators. The first is labial. The labial phone are those which require use of the lips to produce. Labial is a sound that is articulate with one or both lips. So P, B, F, V, W. The next is round. Is a sound require the lips to be made into the shape of an O, which incidentally is what happens when you make the sound O. Next, please. The next is coronal. Is a sound that is articulate with the tongue tip or blade rise. Distinguished sound which involve the front of the tongue from other. For example, is S, Z, T, D, N, R, and D. The next is anterior, is a sound articulate in front of the alveopalatal, consonant articulate in the front of the mouth. For example, P, B, M, T, D, N, F, V. And then for the next is reason, a consonant that occurs in the nucleus of syllable characterized by noise of relatively high intensity as labiodental and uvular fricative and most affricative. For example, S, Z, G, Z, T, Z, and D. Next slide, please. Next is dorsal features. Features that represent placement of the body of tongue. High is sound produced with the tongue body rise are considered high. This applies to both vowel and consonant. For example, E, U, G, K, G. And then there's low. Vowel made with the tongue body distinctly lowered from a central position in the oral cavity are low. The low features specifies the height of the tongue body in the mouth, where indicates the tongue is depressed. Next is back, is a sound that articulates behind the palatal region in the oral cavity. For example, is U, O, A, K, and G. Next, please. The next is tenses. Expresses the tense lacks distinction among vowel. And the next is reduce, is a reduce. Only the schwa e is reduced. So it's minor features. Minor features is a features that represent minor of articulation. It consists nasal, is a sound that made with the velum lowered. For example, M and N. Next is continuant. This feature describes the passage of air through the vocal tract, are produced without any significant obstruction in the tract, allowing air pass through in the continuous stream. For example, E, S, G, and R. Next, please. And there is literal, all and only varieties of ER. And for the last is delayed release or DR. All and only affricate consonants. Delayed release is a feature used mainly when comparing stop and affricate.
Okay, we've talked about why we use features as well as all the features in English. Now let's talk about the representation and the feature hierarchy. So feature hierarchy is the representation of how features are related to each other. You can see here the hierarchy. You probably wondering or like you probably think how to read this hierarchy. So each feature grouping in the feature hierarchy is represented by a label called a class node or simply node. Nodes and features are ranked or on levels or tiers that reflect their relation to each other. For example, all major class features are grouped together at the highest node, called the root node. The root node thus defines whether a segment in question is a vowel, consonant, or a glide. Then after that, from the laryngeal node branch out the features that express voicing states. The place node branches out into the major place features. The manner node branches out into features that relate to general manner of articulation. Here are a reference that we also took for this presentation. So that is all from us today. We thank you guys for your attention, and we hope that you had new knowledge about phonetic features now. For your attention, I thank you. See you soon.